into the LSU Sports Insider podcast. Today is Thursday, July the 31st, and the band is back together. We're here in studio. I'm Zach Ewing, Koki Riley, Reed Darcy, and Scott Rabelais from, that would be left to right on your screen as you're looking. And we're here, guys. Second day of camp. It's back. We've got shorts on, some of us anyway. I mean, because it's that time of year. And we actually got to see real football practices.
And it's great to be back in studio with you guys. I feel like it's been a while. These two were in Omaha for a while, and now we're back. We're doing all those virtual podcasts, so it's great to be back in person with y'all.
SEC Media Days. Obviously, Wilson's been all over the place. And so, yeah, we're back in studio, and I think we're going to be back in studio a lot to build on Koki, an award-winning podcast. I have to throw that out there.
Yes, as you can see up here in the top,
Actually, they probably can't see that.
You don't think they can see that?
You got to zoom in,
I don't
get
know.
the little pinch.
We'd have to ask our producers how that looks.
I'm sure people are going to be freeze framing the podcast.
That is a
zooming on
second
it right
place for Best Web Project, the Louisiana Press Association Award. So congratulations to you, to Amelia and Molly. And I know we've had other Alex and Robert have helped us over the past year too. So congratulations to them. And I don't know, let's go for first place. Something from the Lake Charles American Press about teacher awards beat us or something. I'm not sure what that is, but congrats to them. But we're coming for you. So just putting it out there.
Next year we'll be at the top.
That's right. So second place is not good enough. Just like as we segue into LSU here, second place is never good enough for this football program. They started practice, preseason training camp yesterday, and you guys were out there for a good bit yesterday and then just 15 minutes this morning. So big picture takeaways from what you've seen so far. Obviously, folks, take this with a grain of salt. It's a practice and barely more of another practice that we've seen. It's the first one. They're not in pads. I mean, like, the takeaways should definitely be on the safe side.
Yeah, they're going to win the national championship. It's just a guarantee at this point. Lock it in. You heard it here first.
Wait, were you talking about this podcast or the football team?
The football team and this podcast too. So
They're going to beat Arizona State in the national title game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Arizona State in the national title game. But no, yeah, like it was a. It's early days. Like I think everyone's still trying to remember whose name is who. It's like first day of school sort of vibes out there still, especially on Wednesday where Brian Kelly, when he started his press conference, showed up a card and it was all the names with their numbers next to them, just so he could know which players were wearing which numbers. Which, as the football coach, maybe he should know that already. But like that's a whole
tomorrow, BK.
Yeah, but that's a whole other conversation. But it just kind of shows you just like how this first week is really just about getting the players getting their feet wet, and I think us understanding what the competitions are really going to look like. It's going to take at least another week or two to really figure that out.
And I think that illustrates just how reliant LSU is on the transfer portal, right? Brian Kelly didn't want to be in this position where they have to hit the portal so hard. He would have rather preferred, if everything had gone according to plan, to build the roster through the high school ranks and then fill in the gaps with transfers. That's not what happened. They have 18 transfers, and Wilson has a good story up on theadvocate.com about all this and about teams that are so reliant on the transfer portal like LSU is this year and the success they've had as far as reaching the playoff, reaching the national championship game. It's largely unprecedented. It's small sample size, but it's largely unprecedented for a team with this many transfers to compete for a national championship, right? So we'll see how it shakes out. There's a lot of new faces and a lot of new places, and the whole season, if we can look at it big picture, the whole season is going to rely on how these transfers fare, how many hit, and how many play well in whatever roles they carve out in the preseason.
I've said this many times over the years. The first year I covered LSU on the beat, they went 2-9 in 1992. So I've covered LSU when they were 2-9. I've covered them when they won the national championship, and it's hard to tell from practice when they're just going against each other, how good they are. That said, you can see that they have talent. Koki and I were talking Wednesday while we were watching this. This is a top 5 roster in the country. You would think they are loaded with talented players. Can they make a team? That's my biggest thing. Can they between now and August 30th when they go to play Clemson, which may be the toughest test of the entire season, can they make a team? It's not just enough to have a collection of talent. You have to have a team as well. And I think we saw with last year with Ole Miss, they had a great collection of talent with a great returning experienced quarterback, and they couldn't make the college football playoff. So this is where the true test comes in for LSU over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, all good points. Like, this is a brand new team. They have talent. We're not going to be able to tell for a while, really not until August 30th, if we're being totally honest, exactly how this is going to come together. That, of course, being the date LSU plays at Clemson to open the season. I will say, if you were just a casual fan and you went out to the first practice, let's just say you were able to do that because it's not open to the public, but a good place to start would be with the quarterback. And Garrett Nussmeier was not starting slow. A couple of wow moments in practice Wednesday. Deep ball right off the bat to Barry and Brown. Another one later to Chris Hilton. Like, it's just team drills. It's just what is like 7-on-7 situation. But I would say, again, you're looking for talent. You're looking for kind of those wow moments, and Nuss gave them to us on the first day.
Yeah, he was automatic, almost like a machine out there. Just perfect throw after perfect throw after perfect throw. There was one go ball he threw to Barry and Brown in 11-on-11s that was just like pretty decent coverage, and he just threw it out there and connected with him perfectly. It's like they had been playing together for years. It was that sort of play, and this team has a lot of speed at receiver, so Nuss is going to be able to just sort of throw the ball out there in front of his guys and let him go catch it. And let him go grab it, let him go run after it. I think one of the things you really notice about this receiving core, and one of the things you really noticed about Nuss is that I feel like Nuss is going to be fine in terms of gaining this chemistry with this receiving core. But I guess the one question mark I would have with the receiving core is the size. There's not a ton of size. There's outside of Nick Anderson, there's no one who's over 6'1" in this receiving core, and that's what makes Anderson so important for this team. And I kind of wanted to mention him because he just haven't really seen him do much at all. He's still kind of recovering from that car accident he had earlier this month, and he wasn't able to participate in any of the contact drills on Wednesday. Apparently, he was able to do that today, but we were only able to watch 15 minutes today, so we didn't see him in real action. And he's probably rusty, I'd imagine, because he didn't participate in the spring really at all, and he also didn't. He barely played at all last season either because of injury. So he's such a critical piece for this team because he gives them sort of the size at receiver that they need to sort of combat some of that press coverage that they're probably going to see at some point.
The first thing about the offense that jumps out at you is the speed of the receivers and the depth as well. Brian Kelly said yesterday, and it was kind of a notable thing that he said they basically have 8 SEC starting caliber receivers on the team, and that's a lot. I think he was probably including Trey'Dez Green and Bauer Sharp, the 2 tight ends in that mix. And if you do, you just go down the list: Aaron Anderson, Chris Hilton, Barry and Brown, Nick Anderson, Destin Hill, the Florida State transfer who made a couple plays on Wednesday. Xavier Thomas. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Kyle Parker. Kyle Parker's back from that injury. So there's a lot of options here, and they can withstand injuries, right? Last year, Chris Hilton missed so much time, and that really affected the LSU offense and its ability to stretch defenses vertically. So now, even if Chris Hilton or one of those guys has to sit for an extended period of time because of an injury, what's bound to happen this season, you've got guys they can plug and play and step up to fill that void. So that's what jumped out at you right away is the depth of the receiver room, the speed they have, and the skills that they really added to that group in the offseason.
No question, Garrett Nussmeier is a very talented passer. I was just thinking through my head, he may have the strongest arm of any quarterback LSU's had since Jamarcus Russell, 20 years ago. So he is just a very talented guy. Brian Kelly said the thing he can make all the throws. The thing Kelly said is he's got to limit the mistakes, limit the turnovers, the bad throws. Because you see this microphone right here? Garrett Nussmeier thinks he can throw the ball between this microphone and this bracket in this little space right here. Okay, that's how confident he is in his arm, and he can. I mean, and he looked pinpoint sharp, especially in the 11-on-11 drills we saw on Wednesday. But there's times when he needs to run, and he's said. Brian mentioned his speed, 21.4 miles an hour, something like that. He says a high 4.5 speed. He said he's got some wheels. So his attitude's always been throw first. But there's times when running is going to be the best option. He's not going to run like Jaden Daniels, but move the pocket at the very least, and that could be important behind this offensive line. And there's going to be times when he needs to throw it away because you're playing SEC defenses, and the throws is just not going to be open. But I think everyone is counting. Certainly LSU is banking on it. They're going to be as good as they feel they can be. That he's going to make that progression that we saw with Joe Burrow from 2018 to 2019, and we saw with Jaden Daniels from 2022 to 2023 in his second year as a starter. And if he can do that, well, and if they can block for him, the sky's the limit.
Think of it like Patrick Mahomes, who isn't like this overwhelming athlete, but can just get those 5 to 10 killer yards and just get that first down when the defense sort of bails out in coverage.
Yeah.
And like that's what they need. They need that release valve with his legs, and he has the athleticism and the speed to do it. He's not Tom Brady. He's not a statue out there. He's not Peyton Manning. He's not a statue out there. But if he can just do that, that's all they really need.
Yeah, and I thought, BK, one thing you said that was interesting yesterday was the importance of Nuss taking the zeros. Go for the check down, throw it away when you have to throw it away, and get outside the pocket, scramble for 1 yard, 2 yard, or no gain. Hit singles, hit foul balls. Don't always look for that home run, and that's a subtle way that he can improve his efficiency and cut back on the mistakes that he had last year.
By the way, subscribe to the LSU Sports Insider YouTube channel, because if you're just listening on the podcast feed, you're missing Rab point out the spaces that Nussmeier can throw through, and our award certificate and all that sort of stuff. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button while you're down there for us. Leave comments about what you would like to see from LSU in practice over the next month, or questions you may want answered, and maybe we will try to find those answers for you on future pods. Now, I would feel really, really bullish on LSU if it was like flag football or 7-on-7 or like, because of what you guys are talking about. The speed is tremendous. The quarterback seems like he's in line for a tremendous season. Reed, you were charting offensive line yesterday, okay? And so we have to talk about the other side of this. They haven't put the pads on yet. It's extremely difficult to grade line play before that happens. But we at least got a glimpse of who the initial starters were and who are the guys fighting for those spots.
It was exactly what we expected it to be on day one. Tyree Adams was the left tackle. DJ Chester was the left guard. Braylon Moore, the Virginia Tech transfer, was the center. Josh Thompson, the Northwestern transfer, was the right guard. And then Weston Davis was the right tackle. 4 new starters. The only returning starter is DJ Chester, and he's playing a new position. So there's a ton of uncertainty here in this group of players. We haven't, again, we're probably not going to get any firm conclusions about the group until they actually go and line up against Clemson. But we're going to spend preseason camp monitoring who's coming in, who's coming out, how often are they playing with the rotations here, how often are they swapping guys in and out. Brian Kelly said yesterday that it's pretty up in the air. It's pretty up for all positions. Pretty much are up for grabs. We may see DJ Chester slide to center, and maybe Braylon Moore either go to the second team or play guard. And we may see them swap out both tackles and both guards and leave Braylon Moore at center. There's about 9 guys, I would say, who are competing for the 5 starting spots, and we'll be following that throughout camp, how many changes they make. I think we won't see any firm conclusions exactly how good they are, but we can read into the clues they give us and read the tea leaves to try to see exactly how confident LSU is in that group.
Who would you say right now is the 6th guy right now? If there's an injury or someone really underperforms. I have my answer, but I kind of want to hear yours.
Probably Paul Mabenga, given how much he played last year. I think he's competing with Chester for the left guard because he was the second team left guard. So I think in the event of an injury, he would be the 6th guy for me, at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And I mean, I think, Koki, we talked about this on the pod on Tuesday, but I think you're going to see some shifting with the way these guys line up and who plays with the ones and who plays with the twos. Ideally, if you're an LSU fan, you want to see that shifting end at some point. You want to see them settle on a group of 5.
There's a chance that they've already settled on this, and Kelly is just saying this just to say that they have competition, because I don't really see how any of the guys who are 6, 7, 8, 9 right now are like really true contenders, really quality contenders to go into a top spot. Like Mabenga really struggled last year when he played, more so than Adams. And yes, Chester struggled, but at least he was a starter. And we don't know what we're going to get from Weston Davis at all. But he's a true tackle, and Mubenga's really a guard. So it's not like Mubenga's not even competing for that. And if we think Mubenga's the sixth guy, then you look down at the rest of the list. It's Carius Kern, who's a true freshman, not just asking a lot for a true freshman to start, unless you're a Will Campbell
Especially
or
on the
Emory
line.
Jones.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, unless you're a Will Campbell or an Emory Jones, and those guys don't grow on trees. And then like Bo Bordelon's played a little bit here and there as like a sixth offensive lineman.
Kind of like a
fullback sort of
jumbo
type.
tight end.
Yeah,
you
jumbo
know.
tight end, fullback sort of package. But I don't know how seriously they view him as like a serious starter. And then
Carius Kern.
I mentioned him.
Okay.
And then
Cohen Eccles.
Cohen Eccles, yes, who was a freshman last season, who probably doesn't really have the physical profile to play tackle either. So you're not really competing with a guy like Weston Davis, who I guess is the biggest quote unquote question mark for them. He's going to play guard or center, and they already have two transfers at a guard spot, and then obviously more at center, and then a Thompson at guard. And then he's basically competing with Mubenga, who he was already behind last year, and he's also competing with Chester, who started last year. So, yeah, you can throw out those names as guys who can plug in if there's an injury for sure. But I just don't know how serious they are in terms of actually earning a starting spot.
Do you guys agree with that? Is this more settled than we think?
I think it's a little more settled than we think. That it just speaks volumes to the group that we saw out there on Wednesday was exactly the group we were expecting to see out there on Wednesday. The point is, in the broad scheme of things, we don't know a whole lot about any of these guys because we haven't seen very much of them playing on the field, real reps.
Even though we know who it's going to be, we don't know how good they are.
Exactly.
And we even saw Chester move to left guard, which everyone anticipated as well, to make room for Braylon Moore. So
Exactly.
So
yeah, new position for him as well.
Koki, I feel like I'm quoting Koki the whole time, but I'm going to quote him again. We were
He's a
watching.
smart guy.
He knows his stuff. Yeah, he tells Paul Skeens. That's who tells him how to pitch. But we were talking, and he said it, and I think it's very true. If these guys can block as a unit, they can win the national championship. I mean, all the other pieces look really good, overall. But they got to be. I mean, this is the underpinning on which this whole glittering array of talent rests. And if they can't give them a good foundation, they're going to lose 3 or 4 games this year. If they, and we're going to find out right away. Clemson has 2 preseason All SEC defensive linemen.
Yep.
Who are gonna pressure, and again, Nussmeier better be true to his word, be able to move that pocket at least and scramble out of the way sometimes. So we're gonna see. There's no warm up. There's just practice, and I think obviously it would behoove LSU very much so to be settled on a starting 5, and there could be an injury or somewhere in that, and they're going to insert one of these guys that these guys mentioned, but this is where all their national aspirations rest on this offensive line.
I think they have reason to feel confident in Thompson and Moore because these are longtime starters. Every other team in the country wanted these guys, especially Thompson. It felt like Thompson visited like 10 schools before landing on LSU. Moore was a guy who was pretty highly coveted as well as a center option. So I think you can feel decent about the interior, especially if you have a returning starter at the other guard spot. It's the tackle spots. And those guys are generally on an island. And the last 2 to 3 years, you've had the number 4 overall pick on the left side, and then a talented guy and a 3-year starter on the right side. And those 2 guys, you can sort of set it and forget it. And now you can't set it and forget it anymore. You're going to have tight ends who can help out in the blocking game a little bit. This is why someone like Tradus Green is going to have to be able to block more than ever. Bauer Sharp, one of the appeals of bringing him in is because he could block as a really good blocker, and maybe they can use him in the screen game to sort of alleviate the offensive line a little bit too. But Tyree Adams is a guy, when we've seen him play a little bit, he's actually been fine. But we've seen him mostly at guard. We haven't seen him at tackle a whole ton. He only started 2 games last year. And then Weston Davis is just a massive question mark. Because, again, talented kid. We just haven't seen him play really at all. So it's I mean, the tackle spots, that's if you want to like really drill down on what the question mark with this offensive line, honestly, with this team is, it's those 2 tackle spots.
And can they run block? Because they didn't do a very good job of that last year.
Absolutely. And I think, like, again, we're not going to get a full answer on this until the Clemson game. And maybe not even then, because if Clemson beats you up front, Clemson's going to do that to a lot of teams.
They're going to do that to every team.
Yeah, you may still be decent and have Clemson do that to you. So it might even be a couple weeks after that before we really start to get an idea. I will say a couple things in camp. Number one, do they change the rotations? Because especially if we feel that that's more set, if they start to move things around, that means, they're not as confident in those tackles maybe as we thought. The other thing would be how cohesive are they, especially when we put the pads on? Are you starting to see these pre-snap penalties? Are you starting to see, cohesion versus chaos? And those would be things that would be red flags. And you just don't, when they put the pads on, yes, if the O-line struggles, that could mean LSU has a really good D-line, which we're going to get to in a minute. But you don't want to see them just get dominated day after day either. I mean, you want to see both sides kind of hold their own a little bit in those things. So we may get a few hints over the next 4 weeks. But, it's a question mark for sure. The other questions, guys, some on the defensive side of the ball. Reed, you wrote about this too, but like the secondary, that is an area where we're seeing a lot of rotation, and the D-line as well.
Secondary is pretty wide open. I think we can say pretty confidently that Mansour Delane, by the way, it's pronounced Mansour, not Mansour for those
Mansour's
wondering.
the
Yeah,
restaurant.
man.
Mansour is the defensive back.
Not on the boulevard, Mansour.
Very good.
We feel pretty confident he's going to be one of the outside corners. The other outside spot, there's probably be some competition there. Ashton Stamps, DJ Pickett, Jakeem Jackson, PJ Woodland. Jakeem Jackson's the Florida transfer. And then the safeties. There's 4 or 5 guys competing for both of those spots. We saw a couple different combinations on Wednesday. AJ Halsey, the Houston transfer, and Tamarcus Cooley, the NC State transfer, are probably the 2 favorites. But there's returners like Jordan Gilbert and Javian Toviano and Deshaun Spears who might have something to say about that. And then on the defensive line, we pretty much have a general feel for how it's going to shake out. There probably going to be a good bit of rotations there, just like there always is throughout the season. Patrick Payton and Jack Pyburn are probably going to be your top 2 edges in terms of the guys getting the most snaps. And on the interior on Wednesday, for what it's worth, we saw a lot of first-team reps out of Ahmad Bro at the defensive tackle spot. And then LSU rotated really a lot. The guy next to him, it was all the guys we were familiar with: Dominic McKinley, Jacobian Guillory, who's beginning his 6th year off the Achilles tear last year, and then Bernard Gooden, who I think he's a transfer from South Florida. He flew under the radar a little bit in the offseason during the whole transfer portal cycle, but on Wednesday, and you can agree with me or not, Koki, but I thought he really popped and made a couple plays and really showed that he was going to be a part of the rotation as well. So it's still early, but those are how the battles are shaken out. Those are what we'll be following throughout the month.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still feel pretty good about who's going to start at safety, mostly because the guys coming back, I mean, they really struggled at that position for a reason. Sage Ryan isn't part of that competition, but, Jordan Gilbert really, really struggled last season, and he's a 5th-year senior, and I just don't really know where the extra sort of giddy up in production is going to come from him. I think Deshaun Spears definitely has some ceiling to him, obviously, since he was just a true freshman last season. He could be a real contender in terms of earning a spot, especially if there's some sort of injury. But you bring in Halsey and you bring Cooley and you spend all this money in the transfer portal for a reason.
Yep.
So that's why I tend to sort of lean towards the transfers coming in and starting and making a real impact in the rotation immediately. Maybe that's not totally the case at defensive tackle or at corner, because it doesn't seem like Jackson is totally submitted as that number 2 corner, and they love Pickett, and they also spend a decent amount of money on Pickett, if we're being honest here. So that second cornerback spot is pretty fluid. So I definitely agree with you there. And that defensive tackle, Gooden looked really, really good. It's gonna be hard to see how how he's going to start, but like it doesn't really matter who starts at defensive tackle when you're rotating guys in and out on almost every single play.
No,
So
no, it doesn't, because you got to have two lines. You got to have a couple lines. If there's a sustained drive by the opposing offense, you got to be able to sub those guys out, halfway through, and maybe a couple of third teamers as well. Gooden stood out. He made a TFL on Caden Durham. Just broke right through the middle. Maybe that's not, so you always balance it. Is it a good sign for the defensive line? Is it a bad sign for the offensive line, and vice versa? But they appear to have depth there and skill. And the secondary, I just think the secondary is going to work out. Everybody's wondering, will DJ Pickett be a starter or not? And I don't know, just what we saw of him. He's going to look like a freshman. He's kind of feeling his way through the first couple of days. Not one to make any big mistakes, but they have some options there. And of course, it all centers around the linebacker core plus Harold Perkins, which seems to be the Gibraltar of this defense that you can build everything around.
this is the most talented unit they've had back there, though, in Kelly's time with this program.
100%.
That's where I was going next. Is like, I think, and agree or disagree with this. Like, I think if this LSU team is really going to make a leap in one area, it's the pass defense. It's the secondary and also the pass rush with some of these transfers. Not saying it's a sure thing, but that's where you can see. Now, you could talk about run game on offense. Maybe it's hard to, with a new offensive line. Is that really, like, to me, this is the most obvious place where, hey, if LSU is going to get better than it was last year, that's an obvious area.
And the run game as well. It's easy to forget how much LSU struggled against the run game last year, especially against mobile quarterbacks. So what did they do to address that? They brought in Jack Pyburn, who's a really physical force on the edge, who's a really good run stopper, and he's kind of like that maniac kind of guy who loves the contact and loves blowing up pullers and guys coming in motion. So he's a guy who can help in the run game, as well as Harold Perkins. Harold Perkins is a star. He's playing that position. He can come down at the line of scrimmage and blitz off the edge, or he can sort of have contain on those outside runs and use his speed to get to the boundary and blow up plays that way. We know both him and Whit Weeks, they both have so much speed, and that can really help this defense. Having both of them, knock on wood, healthy for a whole season will do wonders for the defense, because they've got wheels and they can really pursue ball carriers. The other note I'll say is that West Weeks was the other inside linebacker starting next to Whit Weeks. So it looks like that's the way that LSU is going. At least to start, they've got a whole fortnight in the middle.
No, Fortnite defense. That's what I was going to say.
I want to see all three Weeks brothers on the field together at some point. What's the youngest one's name?
Zach.
Yeah. They got to put them all out there. Maybe even a few red shirts at some point. Zach. But
Special teams or something. Come on.
Something like that.
And it's a funny thing about, you mentioned Jack Pyburn and his physicality and his maniac style, and the fact that he kind of looks like the other three Weeks brothers. It's almost like there's a fourth Weeks brother. Even though he's like much bigger and plays on the defensive line, but like they kind of look alike. They kind of play with that same sort of attitude. And if you see if you see any of them on social media, they're always posting pictures together and hanging out together. So it's like there's a fourth one all of a sudden. It's really funny.
Speaking of the Weeks, we have a little bit of an injury update. In the positive news is that both Whit Weeks, who was injured late last, was the bowl game?
The bowl game.
In the bowl game last year, he was hurt. And then also, obviously, Harold Perkins, who was hurt back in week 4 of last year. Those guys are both back. They're a full go. No concerns there. A little bit, you mentioned at the top, Nick Anderson had a car accident, which Brian Kelly called a fender bender, but also has a concussion that he's out for a while. So maybe a little more
in concussion protocol.
Yeah, I mean,
just coming out of
best wishes for Nick Anderson. Hopefully he's okay. And then the other one would be the offensive lineman, the freshman Thomas, who has a broken bone in his foot.
Yes.
And
Fifth
so
metatarsal.
Yes, he'll be out for about a month, and he's going to miss camp. I mean, it's hard to see him contributing a lot as a freshman missing camp.
He's the big name guy that they flipped from Florida State. That was the big recruiting win of the offseason. So he was on. I think we saw him today for the 15 minutes we're at practice. He had a boot. He was in a scooter. So it's still a long ways away from suiting up.
Yeah. Again, on Weeks and Whit Weeks and Harold Perkins, just watching the first 2 days of practice, look like they're doing everything everyone else is doing. They look like they're moving well. I was watching Perkins particularly. He's coming off an ACL. He's a good lateral movement, good change of direction in some drills they're doing. Again, we're just seeing a few drills in those, a little bit in 11 on 11, but the signs look good that they're going to be full go and ready to go. Now, I don't think they would have brought Whit Weeks to media days if he wasn't ready to go. So that's a good sign for LSU. Now, of course, with Harold Perkins, it's just finding the right role for him to play in this star position and getting him to be the most effective, disruptive player. You know, the Tyrann Mathieu of this defense. That's what you want him to be. And where is that? He wasn't a middle linebacker, that's for sure. So hopefully, this, for LSU's sake, this is the right place for him to play.
Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks too have an opportunity over the next 5 months to make an awful lot of money. They could really improve their NFL draft stock, and they could, by the way, really help this Tigers team too.
Yeah, absolutely. And they also have even more depth at that position because you have a guy like Devon Keys who had plenty of playing time last season and was kind of a real rock for them, kind of playing that middle linebacker role that they wanted Harold Perkins to play. And I think he's going to be as much of a contributor as West Weeks is, and he's going to see the field, and he's going to be able to rotate in there. And they have depth after those guys as well. And they added, 4 freshmen? And they have Jaden. They also have Tylen Singleton coming back from last year too. So it's just like a loaded group. Like Charles Ross was a top 60 prospect in the country, regardless of position, and he's probably not even going to play that much this season.
He's starting on the second team, like right away. First day, he was with the second team linebackers. So yeah, I totally agree. I think Devon Keys is going to have a role. He and West Weeks might split time a little bit more evenly than we've seen so far.
All right, I think that's going to do it for our show today. Just some quick reactions to the little bit of camp we've gotten to see. What's next, guys? What would you like to get answered, say, in the next week or the next couple times that you are out?
The run game. You know, what is that going to look like? How is that going to be different schematically? We've already seen some tight end screens, as I've mentioned, with Bauer Sharp, which is pretty interesting. But Sharp's, he's a good blocker, but he's also pretty fast. So I think that's kind of like an interesting wrinkle, and to sort of, you know, put less pressure on the offensive line, not just be this drop back offense, which is what they were all of last season. And can they generate a run game and a screen game to alleviate their drop back offense, put less on, take some pressure off of Garrett Nussmeier's plate. And I'm really interested to see how Alex Atkins plays a role in all of that.
I'll go with Nick Anderson. You know, I just think he's a huge X factor, and we haven't seen him play real football in quite a long time. So I want to see how he's moving. I want to see how fast he looks, how athletic he looks. See if LSU has anything designed for him for, you know, in the red zone, all that kind of work. So I'll be really keeping an eye on him to see how fresh he looks and how involved he'll be on the offense today. In his first time literally practicing in full capacity since he transferred to LSU, he was running with the third team offense in the little simulation drills that they did. I'd expect him to move up the depth chart pretty quickly here. They just got to get his feet wet, get him readjusted and acclimated. So I'll be keeping an eye on him for sure the rest of the month.
You never get to see much of special teams in practice, but I would love a chance to see Barry and Brown return a kick and just see what he can do. Obviously, you're not going to try to tackle him to the ground, but supposedly he's got all the speed and is a blur, and that would, you know, be a field changer, a game changer for LSU. And Chadwick, the new punter, they've got to be better in the punting game. They've been very average. They were very average last year on punting, and not the liability they were in 2022. But we were watching the guys kick today, Ramos and Burrell, who's the kickoff specialist. And Ramos, I'm sure, is still the guy, but boy, when Burrell hits the ball, you hear it. You know, when he when he puts his foot into a ball.
His nickname's Bigfoot for a reason.
It is, man. It's my brother was a kicker in high school, so I've always got a little affinity for the kickers. But special teams has to help. And I want to say one more thing about the defense. We got to see a defense that is improved over last year. They did improve from 2023. They improved last year. They got to improve again. Maybe they don't have to be the just brick wall that LSU's defenses were in 2003 or 2011, but they've got to be one that is disruptive, that causes turnovers, that gets sacks, that pushes teams back into bad situations where they've got to punt from deep in their end and give LSU's offense good field position. So I want to see if we see those kind of signs from this defense.
All right, so we will be back early next week, Monday or Tuesday, with some more takeaways. Maybe talk to Brian Kelly and some of the players a little bit more, and then report back to you. So keep it locked on the LSU Sports Insider podcast feed. Until next time, Amelia and Molly behind the glass for us. He's Koki, Reed, and Scott. I'm Zach Ewing, and we will see you next time.